Dr. Ken Berry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to be here with you. If you don't mind, I'd like to admit something on your show that I've actually never said before. When I first started doing this social media thing back in 2018, when all of the science around a low carb ketogenic diet gelled in my mind and the immediate health benefits it could have for everybody, I was so naive back then that I thought, Nisha, my wife, has finally talked me into starting this YouTube channel. I never imagined that it would become what it is today. I thought, I'll make 4 or 5 videos just explaining this, pretending like I'm just talking to one patient and say, hey, look, here's the actual truth of this. I figured I'd make maybe 5 or 10 videos, and that would be all I needed to do. I figured that once I explained the self-evident nature of human physiology and biochemistry and how your diet makes immediate impact on that, either negative or positive, depending on what you're putting in your mouth, I figured that's all I'd have to do. That would be just so clear, so concise, so self-evident that everybody around the world, including the American Diabetes Association, the American Heart Association, they would all go, how did we miss this? I mean, it's literally 1 + 1 = 2. Obviously, that's not the case. And so I've been fighting this fight for years now. And finally, I started reaching out directly to the American Diabetes Association. They have their chief medical officer is Dr. Bob Gethay. And I would reach out to him on Twitter and be like, hey, you're welcome to come on my YouTube channel. Not for a debate, but for a discussion. I've got 3 million followers. You're going to reach a bunch of people with diabetes if you come on my channel. And explain to me why the American Diabetes Association, who's followed worldwide, keep in mind, it says American, but all other diabetes associations and organizations all around the world take their walking orders from the ADA. Come on my channel. There will be millions of people with diabetes you can reach. Nothing. No answer, nothing, just nothing. They won't reply. And so I would reach out to the ADA on Twitter. I would reach out on Instagram. I'd reach out on Facebook. And my replies to them would get hundreds of comments and hundreds of reshares and retweets. So obviously what I was saying resonated with the people, but silence from the ADA, right? And so I would go to their YouTube channel and to comment on one of their videos, and they had the comments turned off. And I'm like, I would never turn off the comments on one of my YouTube videos, because that's how you get the signal. That's how you get the signal that what you said either helped people or didn't help people. That's how you get the signal that what I'm saying makes sense. It's easy to understand. You read the comments. I'm sure, Stephen, you read the comments and you're like, oh, I should have said that better. I've misled people or I've confused people. Let me clear. And you learn from the comments. They've got their comments turned off. You can't comment on an American Diabetes Association video on YouTube, whether you're an American in Kentucky or you're somebody in Africa, in Kenya, or somebody in Europe and Italy. You can't comment. You can't ask a question. You can't say, hey, I don't really understand. Could you explain this better? No, none of that. That's off limits. So evidently they're so high in their ivory tower that they don't feel like they need to hear the voice of the common man and woman, the common person. They don't care what you have to say, evidently. And so I was talking to some of my friends in the low-carb, keto, carnivore sphere, MDs, DOs, PhDs, and I was like, we should start a diabetes society that actually, on our website, we would actually give recipes that when you prepare that recipe and eat it, it actually keeps your blood sugar down. It doesn't make your blood sugar go up. We should provide information for not only patients, but healthcare providers that actually helps people with type 2 diabetes reverse their diabetes and keep it reversed for the rest of their life. And to give information for people with type 1 or insulin-dependent diabetes, give them information that will help them achieve a normal A1C all other blood markers in the normal healthy range, and use 80% less insulin. And they all immediately, they're like, first of all, they're very excited, like, yes, I love that idea. Let's do it. And then then they consider the Goliath that the ADA is, and they're like, yeah, but that's going to be a hard fight. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's going to be fun. And so immediately they were all on board. And so now on our board of directors, we have Dr. Ariella Glantz, who's in Israel, who's an endocrinologist. We have Dr. Tony Hampton, who's a board-certified family doctor in Chicago, Illinois, in the U.S. We have Professor Ben Bickman, who's a PhD researcher in human metabolism, focusing on glucose, glucagon, insulin, fat storage. We have Dr. Eric Westman, who has published many studies on a low-carb ketogenic diet, who still practices to this day in North Carolina. And we have two registered dietitians, Michelle Hearn and Temple Stewart, who are going to help us with the recipes. And so we have filed the papers for incorporating this in the United States. We're working on getting a website up and running. We started a GoFundMe, and I just checked this morning, and in just a few weeks, we've raised $100,000. Now, you tell me, Stephen, does that sound like this is something that people are interested in? This is people giving $5, $10, $15, $20. We've raised $100,000.
Yeah. I mean, that says it all. And, I just want to pick up on a couple of things you said before I forget. When the comments are turned off, that's a red flag straight away. Right. Absolute red flag. It's so obvious as well. And before we started, I spoke about my journey to you, and I learned more once I'd got my specialist practitioner certificate for obesity and diabetes. I learned more in the first year talking to people, and all of them were ignoring my advice. All the ones that were doing well. And I did not take it badly. I took their comments, and that's how I learned, because they live with that. And this is what bugs me the most. If you've got diabetes, if you've got type 1, type 2, other types of diabetes, you're living with it. You know that. You know. And you also know, if you've got a glucose monitor or a continual glucose monitor, whatever, what foods will put your blood glucose up. So these are educated people. And you're right. I mean, 100K, by the way, in the description to this video, there is a GoFundMe link. Please, please show Ken that in the UK, we are just as interested in this, because it's huge. We're all fed up with being told stuff that we know. That's the thinking that we came across in your frustration, both at the PhD and just now. It's so obvious. If you've got a problem controlling your blood glucose, the last thing you should be doing is stuffing your face with glucose. It's a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer.
But when you have an organization like the American Diabetes Association saying, oh, it's okay, eat the rainbow, eat everything in moderation. Here's a recipe for muffins that actually contains literal sugar plus ground up wheat, which is made of 50% or more of starch. It's going to break down immediately into sugar. If you were wearing a continuous glucose monitor or checked your blood sugar an hour after that, it's going to be sky high. That's going to glycate millions of cells in your body. When you get your A1C check, it's not going to be normal. Following the literal recipes that the preeminent world authority on diabetes has recommended, you need to make this recipe at your home and eat it. Another thing they do that we're not going to do at the ADS is their serving sizes on their recipes will be literally one bite. Now, we're all grown-ups here, right? When it says, oh, eat 1/3 of a cup of this.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. And so that's how they're able to make the recipes look even healthier than they purport them to be, is to give you a tiny serving size. Now, why do they do that? I don't know. The reason I would do that is if I knew my recipe was really, really unhealthy, I wouldn't want to take the blame for that. I would want to put the blame on the patient. And so I would say, just eat 1/3 of a cup of this, or just eat one cookie. And then if you ate more than that, hey, guess what, Bubba? That's not my fault. That's your fault. You glutton, you ate too much. So another thing that the American Diabetes Society will have, the recipes will be rational serving sizes that a normal human would probably eat and go, good, that's enough. That makes sense, right? And I mean, just let's be common sense about this. If you eat too much glucose in the form of whether it's sugar or whether it's grains or whether it's the sugar and other things, that's going to spike your blood sugar. That glycates your cells, and A1C measures that glucose glycation. Let's stop doing that. That seems self-evident, but it evidently isn't. Now, many people in the UK may not know that the American Diabetes Association has a $100 million annual budget every year. They move around $100 million. They get millions of dollars in donations from big food manufacturers. They get millions of dollars in donations from the insulin manufacturers. And so people might be surprised to know that the majority of people with diabetes who inject insulin are not type 1 diabetics. Their biggest market for insulin is type 2 diabetics who have eaten so many carbs for so long, they're already taking 2, 3, 4 type 2 diabetic medications, and their A1C so high, they're so sick that you actually put them on insulin. That's the majority of their market. So do you think that Eli Lilly wants the average type 2 diabetic to know that, hey, you don't need to inject insulin at all, just cut your carbs? You'll never have to inject insulin. They don't want you to know that. They want you to think, this is chronic and progressive. We don't really know what causes type 2 diabetes. It's probably genetic. You just need to take your medicine and eat all things in moderation, inject your insulin, eat the rainbow, inject your insulin. Whole grains are good for you. Inject your insulin, drink some fruit juice every day, inject your insulin. That's the message. That's the message not coming from Big Pharma. You would expect that. That's just human nature. They want to make more profit. That's not the message from Big Food necessarily. They want to make more money. Duh, of course. But when it's coming from the American Diabetes Association, they're a nonprofit, Stephen. Why would they be saying things that benefits the deep pocketbooks of Big Food and Big Pharma? Could it be those $1 million donations they get every year? I don't know. I don't want to be conspiratorial, but you tell me, what other explanation can you come up with?
Oh, it's a mystery, Ken. It really is. This $100 million. I don't know if that sounds like inducement or not, but one of the things I found very interesting about your speech is your alternative, where you were talking about full transparency. And what you just said, this is one of my bugbears of many when we talk about diabetes, is who's funding studies, who's saying what, who says this is high. When I started getting glucose monitors into patients' hands, I can remember, I've been around the block, I'm 60, I'm 60 now, I've been doing this a long time, over a decade. They didn't want the patients to have glucose monitors when I was doing my training. They did not want that. And that's a bit suspicious in my book. In fact, just to give people my story in case they're wondering, what's this guy? Why is he so interested in diabetes? I literally should have been the poster boy for the food guidelines, because I don't smoke, I don't drink. I was very active. I was an advanced personal trainer, even trained somebody in the Olympics. So my activity was there. I didn't have to move more. And I was eating everything that allegedly I should. I avoided red meat, saturated fat. I was eating fruit, veg, oatmeal, as the Americans call it. I was having porridge, skim milk, and I got into my 40s and I just got fatter. I got pre-diabetic. I mean, that's partly why I did my phlebotomy course and become qualified in that, because I wanted to know. I'm all for information. And the more I learnt, two things, actually. The more I realized I didn't know, like you say, and then I realized I was so naive, I absolutely fell for it. But I always remember that when people come to me and they just can't believe it, because it's very convincing. All of this stuff is very convincing. You still get doctors saying eat carbs. You still get it. And this is why I'm looping back to transparency, because I've now realized that some of those doctors that are saying these things and some of these dietitians have paid to say those things.
Absolutely. And that's one thing from day one, the American Diabetes Society will be completely transparent. You'll be able to see every single donation that comes in, how much it was, who it was from. And actually in our articles of incorporation, it's actually in the articles that we will never take 1 penny from any big food manufacturer. We will never take 1 penny from any big pharma manufacturer. If they send us a check, we know there's going to be strings attached to that check. We'll turn it around and send it. We'll void it and send it back. We're not going to ever take a penny from them. We're going to take donations from real people. We'll take donations from people who make real food. We'll take donations from people who are actually helping people with diabetes. From corporations, we'll take money if they're helping people with diabetes live a healthier life, reverse type 2, get A1C down to normal in type 1. If you're helping with that, we're happy to take your money and partner with you as a nonprofit. But everybody from day one will be able to go to the ADS website and say, oh, let's see who they're getting money from. Currently the ADA, even though it's a nonprofit, they make it very opaque. They'll say, well, this person's a platinum member, this person's a gold member, or this corporation, I should say. And they've given between, and so to be a platinum member, you have to give between this much and this much. But they don't just come right out and say, hey, we got 1.2 million from the Eli Lilly, the biggest manufacturer of insulin in the world. They just don't. Why wouldn't you come out and just say that? You brought up an excellent point. Every doctor that I know who is an advocate of a low-carb diet, ketogenic diet, carnivore diet, are huge fans of continuous glucose monitors. We want you to have one. We want you to know what your blood sugar is from minute to minute and be able to make your own informed decisions from that. Without exception, all of the objections, because there are objections to continuous glucose monitors out there. Their doctors are like, no, people don't need this. This will confuse people. People will be afraid of blood sugar excursions. That's what they say. It's like, yeah, they should be, right? But they're saying, oh, this is not going to help people with diabetes. This is going to confuse them. This is going to frustrate them. They'll start excluding entire food groups if you give everybody a CGM. Is that not a form of transparency? I think it is. I think that every person with diabetes should have a right to a continuous glucose monitor. They need that information. That's how you learn how your own physiology reacts to the foods you eat and the foods you avoid. Why would you not want that to be in the hands of every single person on planet Earth with diabetes? Why? Why would you not? It's interesting, and it's predominantly plant-based, vegan-based doctors, cardiologists, others. That's who poo-poos CGMs. Oh, that's a bunch of foolishness. You don't need that.
Yeah, and that might be because plant-based is carbohydrate-based. And
yeah, that would be my assumption. But I mean, I don't want to jump to conclusions.
No, I was just joining the dots in my head as you said it. I mean, it's interesting because imagine eating a Snickers bar and then eating a banana the next day at the same time and seeing the same response. My word.
Yeah, or that big bowl of porridge. And what's your blood sugar? And I've got a vegan nutritionist who's wanting to debate or discuss oatmeal because of my oatmeal post. It's like, guys, if you're pre-diabetic, do not eat oatmeal. Do not. And he's like, well, the science shows. I'm like, oh, the science that was paid for by Quaker Oats? Is that the science you're referencing? Huh. Yeah, and so I'm going to do that. But yeah, that's because so many of these foods are deified almost. It's like they've been, they've been given sainthood. Oh, you can't talk bad about bananas or grapes or oatmeal or porridge. What's wrong with you? You can't say anything bad about them. Well, wear your CGM, eat that big bowl of porridge, see what happens. And you'll never make that mistake again. If you truly care about your health, you'll be like, oh, hell, I had no idea. I thought this was good for me. I can't eat this. I'm going to go back to bacon and eggs.
Yeah, and this is my experience. And when I first started YouTube, I mean, I'm way behind you with numbers and stuff like that. But I want to thank viewers, by the way. I've got to 25,000 subs, so that's good, and 1.5 million views. So here in the UK, the message is getting across. But some of my early videos were just saying what you just said. Hey, don't believe me. I'm just some guy on the internet. Eat the food, do your glucose monitor, and then put in the comment what you thought. And I've actually been banned off Facebook and Instagram for those very inoffensive remarks. Absolutely. I even did a joint tweet, or a tweet that got picked up by Zoe Harcum, and I had to leave Twitter because I was flamed for saying this sacrilege.
So you basically got one school of doctors who believe the plant-based diet is best for you saying, trust me, oatmeal is good for you. And you've got everybody on the low-carb keto carnivore space saying, don't trust me. Wear your continuous glucose monitor and eat the oatmeal, eat the porridge and see what happens. Don't trust me. Never trust me. Verify. Why don't the plant-based doctors want you to verify with the food that they say, trust me, just eat this, it's good for you? Why don't they want you to verify that? I don't know.
Well, my guess is, it's the same reason why they turn the comments off. I mean, I absolutely love the comments. I answer every comment, and I've even had people say, I bet this comment's going to get deleted. And I'm like, no, we're going to leave your comment on here, and I'm going to respond to it, and we're going to let people read it, and they can make their own mind up. And that's the nub of this, I think. And I lucky I'm not wearing my blood pressure monitor, because I think you'll go through the roof talking about this. But in the end, if you can't have a debate about something, if your point of view cannot be discussed, cannot be questioned, then you're on very shaky ground. If I put a video out and I turned comments off, I would be saying, I'm not sure about this. I don't think I can argue my corner. And sadly, that is, I don't want to say the other side because it sounds divisive, but everybody that seems to be pushing for, a plant-based diet, for instance, they don't want comments. They'll actually say, like on Twitter, you're not, I'm not allowed to reply because I'm not a selected person.
Right.
Well, if I tweet something, it's game on. Everybody can say whatever they want to do. I always put links to studies. One of the things I did was a study about oatmeal, and I even did a video showing you how you could look at the conflicts of interest, because it was so hidden that it was Quaker Oats that funded it. And you still get people saying, well, yeah, but, I like my porridge. And that's the other thing. When I was 20, I did like it. I did like my porridge, but I didn't realize the damage it was doing. And I think, because I was a serious athlete, semi-professional soccer player, these medals behind me are for middle distance running. I won a tennis tournament. That's not me being big-headed. I'm trying to get across to people that I actually cared about my health, and I fell for it all completely and utterly. And I think I would have done better if I'd had the proper information. And that's the thing that you're doing, Ken, is you're going to get the real information out there with no vested interests and say, your health is in your hands. We're going to just say, have a look at this and you decide. And that's what the ADA isn't doing. It's completely 180 degrees to that way of thinking.
Absolutely. And it's time for that to stop. And that's why we formed this nonprofit. And that's why we'll soon be on all social media platforms, revealing the truth to everyone around the world with diabetes. And let me just repeat, if I said it already, even though it's the American Diabetes Society, we plan on promoting this message all over the world. Every position paper, everything that we do is going to be translated into multiple languages as soon as we can afford that. And that's why we're raising funds. And so we have to have somebody to do that. But there's no reason, if English is not your native language, why should that information be withheld from you? I don't think it should be. I think everybody deserves to have access to this information. And that's just another layer of transparency is, oh, you're not an English speaker. Well, tough. I don't know what to tell you. I guess, but figure it out. No. Why not make this available in the 5 most spoken languages on planet Earth? Why not do that? If we can afford it, why not put it out in the 10 most spoken languages so that everybody with very little friction can read this and go, oh, I had no idea.
The carnivore space is so generous. And I think we need to do unusual things as well to get a bit more traction, talk in a different way, and be as smart as the plant-based people. They do one thing. Sorry, I've rabbited on. You're the guest, but I just want to get this across because I think a lot more people will see this. We don't demonize the other side.
Right.
That's what they do. They demonize eating meat. They use terrible words like, meat is murder and all this sort of stuff. We don't do that. We just trying to get people to make their own decisions. I think that's the biggest thing about this way of eating. We're not sort of activists. We're just passionate.
And you know what they do? They use very inflammatory, very offensive language, and especially when it comes to climate and things like that. And one of my good friends, Dr. Peter Ballerstadt, he once said, nobody ever considers the carbon footprint of all of the hospitals and medical procedures and pharmaceutical factories. I'd love to know what that carbon footprint is. And he said something that I stole from him, is that when you improve your health personally, you improve the health of the entire planet. And because you're not going to need nearly as many pharmaceuticals, where did they come from? Where were they manufactured? What's the by-waste of that? You're not going to need nearly as many doctor visits and hospitalizations. What's the carbon footprint of that? You're not going to die as soon. You're not going to be as sick. You're not going to be wasting resources of your country or the resources of our wonderful Mother Earth. You're just not going to be wasting as many resources, and you're not going to be producing as much waste, plastic and otherwise, the healthier that you are. And I thought, that's brilliant. I'm stealing that immediately. I'm going to take that. And he's exactly right. But I want everybody to think about it that way, because we're all said, use paper straws, walk to work, ride your bike, whatever, because everybody wants to do their part. We all do. One way you can do your part to protect the planet is to be as healthy as you possibly can. And I think that's a much bigger piece of the puzzle than many of the other pieces that are talked about continuously in the mainstream media. And so also you get the benefit of actually enjoying your life more because you're healthier. So why not do that? There's just so many ways that you can frame the arguments that demonize one side. And I don't know why they do that. I would demonize the other side if I were afraid that they were right, or if I were afraid that they were going to win. Then I might try to demonize them. But I don't want to do that. I want to have discussions with them. I love it when I get vegan comments in my YouTube, where I have comments always turned on, by the way. I love when the vegans come and say, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this study? I love that, because I've never put myself out there as the perfect arbiter of the truth or the science or any of that. I'm learning as I go, just like everybody else. Everybody should admit that we don't know it all, especially enough, Stephen, to know that when it comes to human physiology, biochemistry, molecular biology, we probably know 10% of what it will ultimately be known. I guarantee you there are pathways and there are substances that in the human body that are super important we haven't even discovered yet. Guaranteed. I actually think that no single human being will ever be able to understand the totality of human physiology and molecular biology. I think only a large language model, artificial intelligence, that's the only way we'll ever be able to understand how deeply it goes. If human biology and physiology goes 10 levels deep, we have a pretty good understanding of the first 2 levels. Guarantee you, we'll just wait 5, 10, 15 years, see what we know then that we didn't know now. And so anybody who's going to present themselves as haughty, as the expert, as we've got this figured out, immediately you ought to have suspicion, because I can promise you they don't know. I was talking to a nurse practitioner here in the United States the other day, and it was after a live I'd done, and she's like, it's frustrating and it's almost depressing when I hear you talk, because I realize just how much I don't know. And I said, well, you can't look at it like that, because every day I'm faced with all the things I don't know, probably don't know, and definitely don't know. That's just another learning opportunity. That's all that is. You got to look at it with the right frame of mind. But I told her, your patients are safe, because you're never going to go in as that haughty, arrogant know-it-all and be like, oh, it's my way or the highway. You're never going to do that, because in the back of your mind, you're always going to know there's many, many things I don't know about this. And that's true. And that every doctor should have that mentality, but unfortunately they do not.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things. Oh, by the way, if I got to know 10%, I'd be very happy. I don't think I'm anywhere near 10%, I try to always throw little bits of information in. And, yesterday we did a live stream and I was talking about why your T3 is lower on this way of eating. And the amount of comments I got, I've never heard that before. So I always try to make it sort of bite-sized, really easy to understand, and in the context that makes common sense. I mean, I'm a big fan of common sense. I just want to go back to, the other side, the dark side, and how they are very clever. I saw something on Instagram the other day, and I would say a lot of these people are well-meaning. I don't think it's nefarious. I think they genuinely think this. And there was a guy on there saying, look at this slice of bread. It's only 2 teaspoons of sugar. What's the big deal? And he was waving this bit of bread. Now, of course, you don't have a sandwich with one slice of bread, and there's no context there. And if I had the time, I would then do my video of 1 teaspoon of sugar, 5 liters of blood, and say, right, here's the context. You see, I'm not one of these sort of, put this up and tell them they're wrong. But that's the context that people miss. And it's really clever because it does make it, it's just 2 teaspoons. And if you don't have a context there, you think, well, that's not much sugar. But then if you have someone saying, well, you've got 5 liters of blood, and actually you only need 1 teaspoon. So now we've already doubled that. And if we have another slice of bread, it's 4 times the amount. And then nobody has 2 slices of bread. You always have some jam in it. So that another 3. Before you know it, you've got 9 to 10 times the amount of sugar. And that's the context. And I think that's the sort of thing I wish I had a team of people that could help me with all my ideas, because they're very clever with their advertising. And I think that's one of the things I like about you. In this short video, I'm going to give you 10 things. And I think that's why you ended up being so popular, because they're like 10 minutes. There's lots of information. Yeah, you use the clickbait, and I'll give you an extra bonus one at the end. But that's what you need. You need people to watch all of these things and be really interested. And I love the fact you put all the references in the description. And this is it. This is something I learned from you, actually, because when I started, I thought, no one's going to read the references. But actually, it's not about that. It's about the choice. Yes. If you want to look at it, you can click on it. And I think just doing that makes people realize, oh, wow, they're really confident because I can go and check this out. And I think that's, one of the things that...
Well, isn't that just another layer of transparency? It's like, so many YouTube health influencers, nutrition influencers will just say something on a video, and you're like, well, okay, I guess I either blindly believe that or I don't. But why not put the references? Where did you get this information, so that the people who are interested can go and look it up? And I'm a huge fan of personal liberty. If somebody is a grown adult and they're like, yeah, I hear you, but I don't care. I'm going to eat the porridge and I'm going to put some jam on top of it. That's what I'm going to do. Great. Go do it. Have fun. But I want people to have the opportunity to know. If you choose to know, here's the information. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. I don't want to enforce anything on anybody, unlike the other side in many cases. I just want you to have the information and have the knowledge to make an informed choice, an informed decision, and then you're grown. You get to go do what you want to do, but at least you know what the consequences will be. But you still have every right to do what you want to do.
Yeah, I think informed consent is like the biggest deal, especially in the last 4 years. I mean, that's the big thing I want people to know. If you're eating or drinking a can of soda, all right, know how much sugar's in there and know what could be the potential downsides. And if you still decide to do it, great. And in fact, when I'm coaching people, if they say to me, I really love my coffee, I really love it, could it be causing me some problems? I'm like, well, why don't you take it out for a week and see if the things that are worrying you, heart palpitations or lack of sleep or whatever it is, see if it goes. I mean, this is the beauty of this way of eating. You've got that elimination where I think most people in carnivore and keto actually have a bit more control over what they put in their mouth. So you can do the experiment. And I always say, at the end of it, if you feel amazing, but you miss your coffee, then it's a net benefit thing. You make your own decision. If your knees ache because you're drinking coffee, but you love your coffee more than you're worried about the knees aching, there you go. There's your decision. But I think that's been one of the bugbears. I just want to touch on one other thing that I noticed from many, many years of doing bloods. And I wanted to put this to you because you might not have heard this before. There's 3 markers that people worry about with this way of eating. And there's a commonality to it. So the EGFR, the estimated glomerular filtration rate. So the filtration rate of the kidneys, LDL cholesterol, which it isn't, it's a lipoprotein, obviously, and HbA1c. All of those tend to track a different way to all other markers, like lower blood pressure, better body composition, all of those sort of things improve, but these seem to go up. One of the things I want to say is those three things have one common thing in together, and that is they're all estimated. They're not direct calculations, and they're all based on somebody's opinion and assumptions based on the normative ranges of bloods, which are normally from people taking 60% carbohydrates. And all of those readings can be disproven with other tests. And that's the one of the things I'm finding. I think because people know I've got the bloods background, they'll say, my EGFR is terrible. My doctor wants me on dialysis. And I say, well, go and get a cystatin C test and let's get your filtration rate right. And straight away, it's much better. And, I've got loads of nice reviews and stuff saying, wow, thanks for explaining that. I just wanted to get that out there because I'm finding that more and more often that people worry about the numbers rather than thinking about the presentation of their symptoms. And I think you did a book about bloods as well. So I'm not plugging my book. You've got the book as well. Do you feel the same? Do you feel people are too bogged down with numbers and proxy markers and forgetting how they feel?
Yeah. In any time I'm talking about lab work, one of the very first things I talk about is that your symptoms are just as important, if not more important, than your lab results. And the A1C is a classic example. It's a great proxy marker in most people, but in some people, it's not a good, very good proxy marker. And I'll give you an example of that. In the carnivore community, we see about 5 to 10% of people, their A1C will start to creep up after a few months on really strict carnivore. And this worries them because, they used to be type 2 diabetic or pre-diabetic, and they're like, what the hell? My A1C is going up. This can't be good. And so the A1C is an estimated number. That's exactly right. And we know that there are many things that can make the A1C falsely low, like drinking too much alcohol, and anything that causes your red blood cells to die quicker is going to give you a falsely low A1C. So drinking alcohol, smoking tobacco, and many, many other things, and as well as medical conditions that make your red blood cells die prematurely, that's going to give you a falsely low A1C. But now we're learning that there are things that can give you a falsely high A1C, one of which is eating a very nutrient-dense, uninflammatory, ancestrally appropriate diet, like a carnivore diet. About 10% of people, their A1C will start to creep up. And so the way we verify that that's not a problem is by checking an actual marker, such as glycated albumin or a fructosamine test. And in every single carnivore whose A1C is starting to creep up, when we check the fructosamine or the glycated albumin, 100% of the time it's normal. And so then we can say your red blood cells are just living longer. Instead of the average of 110 days, that's what the average red blood cell lives, yours are living 120, 130 days. And we know that because the albumin, which is just a molecule, it's not a living cell. That's what we're checking when we check fructosamine or glycated albumin. It's not getting glycated in a pathological way. And so, some people love the data. They love the numbers. They love the black and white. They love the spreadsheet. I check labs, definitely, but that's not the end all be all. You've got to know the complete situation of the patient, including their symptoms, or you're not getting a complete picture.
Yeah, and I think I just want to add something, because when I was trained, I was told about hemolytic anemia, and I was told to ignore the HbA1c because it's going to be artificially low because the red blood cells die. And this is maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I started to talk about this. And I went down that rabbit hole. Well, if that's the case, then if it's artificially high. And I was having people that were saying, look, my continual glucose monitor is showing that I'm pretty great. So when it comes to my glucose management, my fasted insulin is great, and C-peptide's really great. Oh, I don't understand this. I'm not eating carbs. And I say, oh, yeah, I trust you. You can also do what's called a reticulocyte count, which looks at the production or the immature red blood cells coming from the bone marrow. And we can actually prove the red blood cells are lasting longer. Yes. And it's just nailed on. So, this is the thing I wanted to sort of finish with is there is a wider picture to all this, but actually in the end, it's all explainable. If you've got any worries about this way of eating, ask the question, because there is always an answer, and it's common sense. It makes common sense, and I like to base mine on historical medical information. So I've got my Guyton's text, medical textbook, and I'll look that up. That was before Big Pharma sponsored medical books, and I said, that's when I trained about the hemolytic anemia. So what's the reverse of that? And I go through the sort of common sense. Anyway, right. We got you on to talk about your diabetes, American Diabetes Society. So we're sort of wrapping up now. So how do you want to wrap this up, Ken?
So if anybody can give 5, 10, 20 pounds to the American Diabetes Society, you said you're going to post the GoFundMe link. And like I said earlier, this is going to be a global organization, even though the word American's in the name. We're going to publish all of the information in multiple languages. There's going to be complete transparency from top to bottom. Currently, all the board members are working for zero money. We're doing all this for free, and I, for one, will always do it for free. I'm sure the other board members probably agree. But at some point, we will hire employees to run social media, to kind of collate and publish to the website, to get the recipes up and going, to do all those kind of secretarial things. But always you'll be able to check how much are they paying that person? How much are they paying that person? Where are they getting their money from? Have they taken any money from Big Pharma? Have they taken money from Big Food? Have they taken money from the World Health Organization? Have they taken money from the World Economic Forum? You'll always be able to look and see either yes or no. And I think that deep, complete transparency is going to give people a level of trust in the American Diabetes Society that increasingly people are pulling away that level of trust from the American Diabetes Association and other associations and organizations who behave like them. People are pulling away because, like you hinted at earlier, most of us got severely burned over the last few years, blindly trusting anybody. And I think all of our eyes are open now, at least a little bit. We're not going to blindly trust anybody. And as Stephen and I both said, don't blindly trust us. We do not want you to do that, unlike others. And so I'm a 100% a proponent of give as much information as you can, give it as cheaply as you can, free if you can, have complete transparency, accept comments from everybody, have discussions with everybody, because what we're all doing here in the end is we're trying to rediscover a proper human diet. That's what we're trying to do, right? And we're the only species who has to have this discussion, because every other species of animal on the planet knows exactly what they should eat and what they should avoid. They know exactly how much to eat, when to stop eating. They know all that. They don't have to have discussions about that. But for some reason, humans have to discuss these things. And so I think the more open that discussion can be, the more inclusive it can be, the more complete and transparent it can be, the quicker we can arrive at what is a proper human diet and how should we eat and when should we eat and when should we stop eating. We'll get those answers. And then I can go back to just doing what I used to do before I thought back in 2018, hey, if I make a few videos, I'll explain this to everybody and it'll all be settled.
Yes, it's so frustratingly common sense, isn't it? But you're right. We're fighting the good fight, Ken. And to everybody watching, please do use the link in the description and pay what you can. I'm not a rich person. It's just me on my own. But every single penny will count, I promise you. So thanks ever so much for listening. And Dr. Ken Berry, thanks for being the guest. It's been great.
Thank you, Stephen. It's a pleasure.